So the first thing we want to look at are the upgrade steps. So those upgrade steps that we're going to go through is we're going to review the upgrade options and the reason to upgrade. So this is where we'll have a discussion talking about exactly why do we want to upgrade our environment from Secure Platform over to Gaia. There may be many reasons, and those reasons may be an audit reason or a new security feature that you want. The next thing that we'll see in the module is we're going to perform an actual backup configuration. So we always want to do a backup whenever we're doing an upgrade just to make sure we know exactly how the environment was functioning before we make any changes. The next thing we will perform is that we're going to check our upgrade wizard on checkpoint.com to locate the package. So on checkpoint.com we have the upgrade wizard, and it's a wonderful tool, and we'll see that. Now the next thing that we'll do is we'll attach our ISO file to our VMware workstation, and once we have it on the VMware workstation, we will go ahead and start the upgrade process, and we'll follow all the prompts that are available. So once that upgrade process kicks off and we run through everything, then we will actually reboot our virtual machine. It's very important to make sure you reboot the platform, and that doesn't matter if it's a virtual machine or a physical machine or running inside of an ESX environment, for example. All those environments, you need to make sure you reboot the firewall after performing the upgrade process. Then we will look at the verification steps to ensure the upgrade completed successfully. So we're looking for good things here, and we'll see those. And then finally, your last step to complete as a security administrator or someone responsible for administering your company's firewalls is we want to go ahead and upgrade the management server, and then you would deploy the policy out to your firewall. So let's continue on from here, and we'll see the steps that it takes to get a distributed deployment from Secure Platform over to Gaia. So let's review our upgrade process and the process we will take to upgrade our Secure Platform operating system up to the Gaia OS. So we're going to start on the checkpoint.com website, and as we can see, we see all the different options that are available. But the one we want to go to is the actual support tab, so we'll select that. Now under the support tab, over on the right hand side for me, there's an option here for the upgrade wizard. So we're going to go ahead and go into this actual upgrade wizard, and we're going to select the find fresh installs. This is a good tool that Checkpoint put together, and I highly recommend you using this because it'll allow you to find and locate the correct package. That way you don't accidentally download the wrong ISO or try an upgrade process that's going to ultimately fail for you. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to select upgrade, and then we'll select next. Once we select next, we need to give it some information about our current environment. So we're going to go ahead and scroll down a little bit to give us a little bit better visual. And for our products that we're working with, currently we have our Secure Platform operating system running. So we're going to choose it's going to be an actual security gateway. And our actual device that we're using is an open server. And then we'll select the appliance model just to be open server. Now our operating system we need to select. In this case, I'm going to choose we're using Secure Platform, and we're going to upgrade to a version of the potential option for R77.10 on Gaia is where I want to ultimately end up. So we're going to say, just for example, we're running R76. I went ahead and did a fresh install of our Salt firewall just to demonstrate this, and I happen to put it on the R76 version of Secure Platform. So not really any difference in what we've had before, but I'm going to choose this, and at this point we'll say that we're wanting to upgrade to the Gaia operating system, and the version we're going to use is the R77.10. So as we can see, we've pretty much fully populated all the fields inside the wizard here. We're using a security gateway. It's an open server. We're going from Secure Platform up to the Gaia OS, and the actual versions are going from R76 to R77. So as we can see, we'll select next here. And like I said, this is a great way to find the exact package that you need to ensure when you do upgrade, you don't have any mistakes, you don't choose the wrong package, and you don't have any of those failures. So as we can see, we have a couple packages here. We have our fresh install and our upgrade package, and it tells us all the versions that it's applicable for. and then we have the actual upgrade package that we can use from the web UI or using Smart Update. The package that I'm going to end up using is this version right here, the one for the open server. So what we're going to do is it would basically prompt me to log in and download that. I've already downloaded it, and I have this information already attached to our virtual machine that we're going to use. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to go ahead and go over to our Salt Firewall. So I went ahead and went into the VM and attached this ISO image to the CD-ROM option. And now at this point, so we need to go through a few options before we start our upgrade process. It's a good idea for us to discuss what of our options are available to us before we perform our actual upgrade. So I'll say this, in a distributed environment upgrade like we're doing here, we have to understand that the management server must be at a higher or equal value than the firewall that it's managing. So meaning if we do an FW-ver here, we can see that this is going to show us that it's running R76 on the actual operating system. And what we see here is that our management server that's going to be supporting this would have to be at an equal or higher version. So meaning that we're taking our firewall install up to R77.10, we will also take our management server there as well. Now we're not going to cover that upgrade process in this particular module because it's kind of redundant. We're going to follow the same process to upgrade the management server as we do here on the firewall. But I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. Just remember, the golden rule is whenever you perform a checkpoint upgrade, your management server must be at an equal value or a higher value than the firewall that it's managing. Okay, so what we're going to do at this point, before we actually perform our upgrade, we're going to look at a couple of options here, and we're going to talk about just primarily for upgrades. So we need to understand that whenever you're performing an upgrade on your firewall, it's always a best practice if we can to get new hardware and perform the upgrade there and then switch the cables over. That would be a best case scenario, so you could just ultimately switch the cables back if you need to fall back to the old firewall. But in the case that you only have one server, we're going to take some precautions to make sure that we back up the configuration before we actually perform the upgrade. So the first step we're going to take is we're going to just basically type in backup here. And once we perform backup, it asks us if we want to proceed. We'll say yes to this. So what it's going to do is create the backup package, and this backup package will be locally on our secure platform operating system. Now we show you exactly in modules in this series where all this backup information ends up, but ultimately you want to take a backup of your firewall, and you want to make sure that you transfer that off of your virtual machine into another FTP location. That way you can get to it if you do need to restore from your previous version. A couple things that you want to make a list of. You want to make sure that you take a backup of the actual system. You want to make sure that you know the exact version you're running. So that's what we did here whenever we ran the FW-ver. It's a good idea just to highlight all this information and copy it off to a notepad. And you also want to make sure that you know the potential routing table for any static routes or any interface information that was built into your firewall. It's a good idea to go ahead and take a copy of that by just running a actual ifconfig and copying all the actual interface information the same way, just by highlighting it, and also by running a netstat-rn, which we'll take a look at now. So if we look at an ifconfig, and this is just something that I do, and I've had a lot of success with it, and that's why I'm going to recommend that you do this. So as we can see, we see all the information for the interfaces here. As I'm doing upgrades, I like to have all this information in a notepad. That way I know exactly where I came from, because there's a wealth of information here. And what we can see the IP address, we can see the broadcast IP, we can see the actual hardware address right here for the MAC address. So we'll know from a switch perspective what actual MAC addresses should I see on the switch ports before and after the upgrade. So things to remember as we talk about switches as well. Occasionally you may need to clear ARP on your switch. That way, if you migrate to brand new hardware, it doesn't see this old potential MAC address and it doesn't forward any packets. So something to remember as you're doing an actual upgrade of your CheckPoint device. If we do actually change hardware, you may need to clear the ARP cache on your switch. That way you can forward packets again. So something to keep in mind. So like we were saying, I like to take a copy of the actual ifconfig-a. I like to have that, as well as I like to have a copy of the current routing table that's on the firewall. And I do that via netstat-rn. And that'll give us this as well. So we like to go through and basically just copy all this information, highlight it all, put it in a notepad, save it somewhere on a cloud resource or somewhere offline. That way it's safe, so you know exactly what you had before. If you do potentially run into any issues and you're performing this upgrade on either new hardware or potentially the same hardware that you had before, like we will, you already know about this information. So just a little housekeeping, a little way to kind of help you out. So now that we have this in place here, the next thing we need to do is actually start our upgrade process. So we're going to start our upgrade process by issuing a patch add CD. Because we've already attached the ISO file to this virtual machine, it should be easy for us to go ahead and start the upgrade process. So it's patch space add space CD. We'll hit enter, and it's going to tell us that it recognizes this potential package, and it says what do we want to do is what it's asking. And we're going to hit option number 1 to choose the Gaia R7710 upgrade package. And we're going to say yes to this for the MD5 checksum. We get an option here if we want to create a backup image for automatic revert in a production environment. This may not be a bad idea, but in my test environment, I'm going to say no to this for the sake of time. All right, because we've already backed up the image, we have it in our location. So now we're starting the actual process. It's going to start out by extracting all the files, and then we'll see it will perform an actual upgrade of all the packages as well as the operating system. So we're going from a secure platform operating system up to Gaia, but we're also upgrading the CheckPoint packages from R76 up to R77.10. So once we do this, again, we're going to do this to the actual firewall in this particular module, but prior to this, I've already made the same upgrade on our management server for our Salt Lake City site. So once this is done, we'll basically have a fully upgraded environment for R77.10, and we'll be able to push policy and deploy a firewall package out that will be on the latest and greatest operating system as well as the latest and greatest CheckPoint actual software for all the new features and all the latest bug fixes and everything. This is what we want to be using as of, June 2014. Of course, this is going to change over time. We have R80 just around the corner, but this is just something for us to take a look at. So as we can see, it's going to extract the files. This is going to take a few minutes, and it's a great time for you to go take a break. Give it about 10 minutes or so for it to finish the extraction process, and then you will get a few more prompts along the way. So I'm going to pause for a moment, let it finish up this process, and then we'll pick it up whenever the additional prompts start showing up. So we can see it prompts us at this point during the upgrade. It says, "Thank you for choosing CheckPoint Software Technologies, the worldwide leader in internet security. And so please make sure we obtain the license before continuing." That's something that's going to prompt you for. In this case, in a production environment, you want to go ahead and grab all the information from your user center account. In our test environment, we don't have to have a license. We can just click next for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to select next, and then we're going to select Y to agree to the actual license agreement. And it tells us in order to upgrade, we need to have a valid support contract and all those different areas. So at this point, we can select next again. And then once we select next, it tells us to please wait. We get an option for the upgrade process requires a valid support contract. You can download the information directly from the CheckPoint User Center. For us, we're going to hit option number 3. We're going to continue without contract information. And it's actually something I usually do later via Smart Update as it indicates here. And we'll select next. and it tells us to please remember to download our contract information. We'll select next again, and we'll hit option number 1 to stop all checkpoint processes. So we'll hit option next at the bottom, and as we can see, it's going to go ahead and stop our checkpoint processes, and it'll start our actual upgrade process. And it tells us that we've selected the following products for installation. In this case, it recognizes that it's just a firewall, so it's going to indicate a checkpoint security gateway. If this was a standalone install, it would say security gateway and security management server. As we can see in the upper right hand corner here, it's indicating it to be R77.10 is the actual package that we're working with. And as we can see, it's going to start the actual upgrade process for us once we select next. So as we start this process, it tells us to please wait while the required installation files are extracted. It'll take a few minutes again for it to do this process. So we pretty much can pause and wait a few minutes while all this occurs. And it'll pretty much go through and extract everything, install the packages, perform the upgrade to R77.10, as well as perform the upgrade to our Gaia operating system. So we'll pause for now, come back, and we'll check this out, and we should be good to go in about 5 to 10 minutes. So now that you can see that the upgrade process has completed successfully, and it'll actually tell us that although the upgraded process has succeeded, please note that the gateway is not eligible for upgrades according to Checkpoint license agreements. That's normal. You will see that until you actually go into the Smart Update application and attach any Blade licensing that the Checkpoint software requires of you. But for now, you're perfectly fine at this point. You can reboot your VM, and once we actually reboot it, we'll basically come up and we'll see the upgraded process, or the actual upgraded software and operating system that we have for R77.10. So I'm going to go ahead and pause a moment, reboot the virtual machine, come back, and we'll do some quick verification. So I've rebooted our actual Salt Lake City firewall, and as we can see on the Gaia portal here, we're running the R77.10 package. So we can see the upgrade process of going from a distributed setup on secure platform all the way up to a distributed setup on R77.10, as well as utilizing the Gaia operating system, really isn't that bad of a process. As long as we follow the steps, go through some prerequisites, make our backups, and then follow the wizard, you should have great success when upgrading this type of environment. So as we can see, all of our interfaces are up. We're running the right amount of code. Now the last step you'd want to do is to go over to the management server in a distributed environment and go ahead and make sure that you push a firewall policy back out to your firewall that you were previously managing. And that would be the last step for you to utilize at this point. But at this point, I just want you to see the actual upgrade process of how to get from secure platform all the way up to the Gaia operating system. So I hope you got a great amount of information out of this, and I'll see you in the next module. Awesome, we've made it to the end of another great module to show us how to upgrade our environment from secure platform over to the Gaia operating system. In this module, we covered the distributed deployment and the upgrade process for that deployment. And the steps that we went through, just a quick recap of what we saw in this module. The first thing we did is we went ahead and did a review process of the upgrade options and the reason to upgrade that environment. Then we looked at our backup configuration that we wanted to perform before we actually made our actual upgrade process to make sure we had a good backup. We saw on the Checkpoint Upgrade Wizard how to locate packages using that tool, which is a wonderful tool, and I highly encourage you to use that. Then we went ahead and attached that ISO file over to our VMware workstation. We started the actual process and we followed all the upgrade prompts to get the upgrade completed. Finally, we went ahead and rebooted our virtual machine. And once that virtual machine booted back up, we went through the verification steps to make sure that the upgrade completed successfully. And it did, so we're in wonderful shape. And the last thing that you're going to want to do in a production environment is go ahead and perform the same type of upgrade on your management server. And then after that's upgraded, push policy out to all the firewalls. So I know we learned a ton of wonderful information in this module, so let's continue on from here and I'll see you in the next module. Going to be our upgrade steps. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a backup of our management database using a command known as a upgrade export command. And once we have that actually backed up, we'll have a good solid backup to know that our environment is protected. Just in case anything happens to go wrong during the upgrade process, we can roll back to where we were before and not have any major issues. The next thing that we're going to do in the module is to locate our upgrade package. That upgrade package is on CheckPoint.com, so we'll make sure we upgrade the correct package using the options on the website. And then once we have our upgrade package, we'll transfer that over to our Chicago Firewall site using a VM, and we'll just use an FTP option to get it over there. Then actually on the actual Chicago Firewall site, we'll create a directory. We'll use the Unix make directory command, and then we'll extract the upgrade package into that var directory. And once we have a package upgraded, or actually extracted, we'll go in and run a command known as the Unix install script. So these are some steps as we go through them. You'll get familiar with them, and it's going to be things that are really going to benefit you from coming from Secure Platform to Gaia. Now, once you get to Gaia, you don't have to do a lot of these steps anymore, which makes it really awesome, and we'll see that in the Gaia upgrades as well. So the next thing that we need to do after we've actually executed the install script, we're going to go ahead and reboot the virtual machine after the install completes. And then after it reboots, we're going to do some OS verification, make sure our checkpoint upgrade worked as expected. And then once everything's nicely upgraded, we'll have a good solid set of skills to take any environment that you want from a secure platform operating system up to the Gaia operating system, but also at the same time you're also upgrading the checkpoint products. Maybe it's R65 or R70 or R75 up to the latest R77. So let's continue on from here and check out the steps that it takes to upgrade a standalone secure platform deployment over to the Gaia operating system. So now we're going to go through our actual upgrade process of taking our standalone setup for our Chicago Firewall site up to our R77.10. So the first thing we want to do is go ahead and open up a PuTTY connection, and we're going to connect over to our Chicago Firewall site on its external interface, and we'll log in as our admin account. And once we log into this firewall, let's go ahead and maximize this so you can get a little better visual. And what we want to do with this process is just do some backup processes as well as do some verification to see where we're at. So if we do an fwver, we can see we're running our R75.40 version of code right now, and we actually want to take it up to the R77.10 version. So what we're going to do with this process, we're going to go ahead and perform some backup operations. So let's do a change directory. Because this also has a management server attached, because it's a standalone setup, I want to perform an upgrade export to back up the management server, the firewall rules, any users, anything that we would use from a management perspective. I want to have a separate backup of that, as well as performing a local backup of the secure platform operating system as well. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and change directory over to $fwdir, and then it'll be to /bin. And under /bin, we're going to do a cd to the upgrade tools directory. Alright, so now we'll clear our slate here. We'll do a ls to list, and we see everything that's available. So we're going to do a /, and then we're going to do an upgrade _ export, and we're going to call this one the original .tgz. So it can be any name that you want. It just needs to be something .tgz whenever you make the export of your management server. So once you have this in place, what you can do at this point is just go ahead and hit enter. And once you hit enter, what it'll do is it'll kick off the actual upgrade export process for us. And it'll ask us, are we sure we want to continue? It's going to issue a CP stop of the management server. We'll say yes to this. Hit enter. And as we can see, it's going to go through the process of copying the required files. Now this will take roughly about 2 to 5 minutes, depending on the speed of your system. I don't have a whole lot on the management server, so it really won't take that long for us. Maybe only take 30 seconds to a minute or so. But that's the first process or the first step we want to take into backing up a standalone setup. So if you're in an environment where the management server as well as the firewall are on the same physical server or virtual machine or whatever it may be, go ahead and take these precautionary steps to make sure that if you have an issue, you can restore the environment exactly back to the way it was before. And if you need to reach out to support with CheckPoint software support with your TAC group, you'll have this information, and it'll make that support call a lot shorter call because you'll be on top of your game. So as we can see, it's compressing the files now, and once it compresses the files, it actually puts it in the same directory. Now, whenever we issue a CD to the $FWDIR, that's basically a symbolic link to another area on your secure platform hard drive. Now, this area is in the op directory. And once you actually go into the fwdir/bin/upgrade_tools directory, you can basically go ahead and take a look at what it tells us here on this screen. And it says the operation completed successfully. And this is the location. So it's opt, CP suite, whatever version you're using, FW1, bin, upgrade_tools, and then the file name of original.tgz. So you'll want to back up that and transfer it via FTP or SCP off of your actual firewall to another location, just in case you need to restore it as part of your upgrade process. Now that you have that, that'll back up the management portion, any users, any firewall rules, any NAT rules, anything that makes it possible for traffic to pass through the box, with the exception of unloading the policy. It's inside your original.tgz upgrade export. Now the next process I like to take is similar on all my upgrades. I like to run an ifconfig-a, and I like to get a highlighted option to copy this off to a notepad so I know exactly what interfaces I had, what the MAC address was before, any of that information, how it's connected. It's good to have this information before and after your upgrade, so you'll go ahead and take that as well. So I'll highlight that, copy it off, put it on a notepad. The next thing I like to have is the actual routing table. So I'll do a netstat-rn. Go ahead and grab the current routing table, because what I have found in a lot of environments as you do the upgrade, if you don't take these precautions ahead of time, you'll discover someone had a static route on a firewall that was put in by an administrator who worked there 10 years ago, and then all of a sudden you upgrade it and they're like, it's broken, traffic's not flowing, why is this? It's because usually there was a static route or some kind of static entry that was put into the routing table of the previous firewall that didn't get migrated over. In a standalone upgrade, most of the time it's just going to upgrade in place and you're not going to have this issue, but it's better to take your precautions, go ahead and copy this information off, and if you do end up going to a new piece of hardware for your upgrade process, you basically will have this information. It's a nice to have. So we pretty much did an upgrade export. We did our actual ifconfig-a. We have our netstat-rn to grab our routing table. Now the last process I would recommend doing is performing just a local backup. So we'll just say backup and we'll say yes to this. And this is going to create our local backup package. Just like it would on any other firewall or management server, it's going to create it and then store it on our local hard drive. So we'll basically copy that off as well. So once we have all that information copied off, we'll step through the process of performing our patch add CD, and we'll start the actual upgrade process of taking this R75.40 machine up to R77.10, but also up to the Gaia operating system. So as we can see, this is a very systematic approach. As long as we take these precautions, there should be no reason that we don't have great success. So I'm going to go ahead and let it finish up the backup process, and then once this is completed, we'll go through the actual patch add CD process. So now we're in a position to go ahead and start our patch add CD process. to get our R77.10 installation and our upgrade up to the Gaia operating system and R77.10 completed. So what we're going to do is, like we've seen, we're going to issue a patch add CD. And what this will do is actually reference an ISO file that I have attached to this VM. We'll hit option number 1 for the Gaia R77.10 upgrade package. And then we'll say yes to the MD5 checksum. And this will start the process of actually extracting it. We're going to say no, that we don't want to do the automatic revert again, just for the sake of time. It's going to go through the verification process and then start the actual process of unpacking and extracting all the files for us. So we'll let this complete up for us here, and then we'll pick this up once it completes the actual upgrade process, and then we'll run through some quick verification to make sure that the Gaia OS, as well as the information that we want to see for the firewall, is still in place and still working as expected. So now we're going to choose the option to upgrade our installed products. So we're going to go ahead and hit in here to go next. It's going to tell us to please wait. And what's going to occur is it's going to start the actual installation process for us. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and select next here. It went ahead and recognized that we had a security gateway as well as a security management server installed on this virtual firewall platform. And by default, the Smart Event and Smart Reporter suite are installed whenever we install the management suite. So if you see that on your own installation or setup while you're testing a upgrade, don't be too alarmed, because it's part of your security management package. So we'll select next here, and it tells us to please wait while the required installation files are extracted. So it'll take a few minutes, let it finish up this actual process, and it'll complete the actual upgrade for us. Then we'll come back and check out the R77.10 features along with the Gaia operating system, and we'll say goodbye to the secure platform, and we'll actually be welcoming the Gaia operating system into our configuration. So like I said, it's a good time to go ahead and pause. Let's take a couple minutes. We'll come back and pick this up once it completes this portion of the installation. So we completed the actual upgrade process, and we are prompted to reboot our firewall, just like we were in our distributed Gaia upgrade. So I went ahead and performed the actual reboot for the sake of time, just to speed things up for us. And now I'm back to our PuTTY window, and now we're going to actually attempt to log in to our Chicago Firewall Site A on its external IP of 10.1.1.254. And then we're just going to do some quick verification and then check a few things out from the actual web page as well as the command line. So we'll go ahead and log in here, and it's going to prompt us to log in because of keys changing, different logins, upgrades. It basically says that it sees a different image. So we're going to log in as admin, and once we log in here, what we'll do is basically, if it has a locked database override, we can go ahead and perform that. So this is very common. You're going to see this in Gaia from time to time. If someone else was previously in a GUI window, or if you were in Smart Dashboard and you attempt to make changes via the command line, this is a comma error that'll pop up for you. And let me go ahead and maximize this so we can see a little bit better. It says we're going to use the command lock database override to override the actual lock. So we're going to go ahead and perform that now. And we can actually do command completion, so you can say lock database and say OV and hit your tab key, for example, and it'll actually do that auto complete for you of the actual command. So we'll hit enter at this point. So we have the actual lock of the database in our court. So now we can go ahead and log in at this point. Let's go ahead and type in expert. We're going to go in under expert mode, just like we would on the secure platform software. And now on the operating system for Gaia, the expert mode's still there, but it does tell you, warning, all configuration should be done through CLISH. You're now in expert mode. So what that means is that we have the CLISH command line, which is our first command line instance that we see once we log into a Gaia OS. There's just a few commands there that we need to be familiar with there. We've talked about those for overall structure. It's something for you to be familiar with, but for now, this is for the actual upgrade process. As we get further and further along in our checkpoint education, we'll dig into the command line more and more. But for now, the things that we want to check is basically after we do the actual installation or upgrade process, we want to run an FWVer and make sure that we actually see that it's running the software version of R77.10. So we're in good shape there. We want to go ahead and do an FWStat as well. And what that'll show us is our actual security policy. Is it actually installed? At this point, it shows that it's a local host and it's a standard security policy, and it was installed basically through the ETH0 interface, which is our 10.1.1.254 IP. So now that we know those things are done, we're going to do an FWM space ver, and we're going to check the management server. Because this is a standalone setup, we want to make sure that the firewall shows the correct version, and we also want to make sure that the management server portion of it has the right version. And in this case, we're in wonderful shape because it's showing R77.10. So at this point, we're in good shape. So what's our next step here? Our next step is to actually launch a web browser and go into the actual web browser and check out the options that are available for the Gaia portal. And we'll continue on from that in just a moment. So we're going to pause for a moment. I'm going to go ahead and launch this as a web browser, and we'll pick this back up on the login screen. So now that we have a web browser open, let's go ahead and continue on over to our Gaia portal. In this case, it's our external IP of HTTPS to 10.1.1.254. We're going to go ahead and tell it that we understand for any security warnings, and we'll confirm the security exception. Alright, so we see our Gaia portal. It says R77.10, so we're in great shape here. So let's go ahead and log in as admin, and we'll log in as our admin password that we've always used for this particular VM. So once we log in here, what we should see is immediately see that it's CheckPoint Security Gateway is running R77.10. We see our outside interface is up. We see our inside interface is up, so we're in good shape there. And now that we have that in place, we can actually check out what's going on in the Smart Dashboard. So we have the option right here to download the Smart Console. We're going to go ahead and select this option, and what it'll do is actually prompt us. So we're going to go ahead and save this file here. And once it saves the file, what we'll actually do is walk through installing the Smart Console application. So let's go ahead and take a look at that now. And as we can see, it's pretty quick with the actual installation process. It's about 168 megs or so it won't take too long for it to complete the actual installation. So let's let it go ahead and finish up this. And the actual installation is actually about 300 megs. So we'll go ahead and select the smartconsole.exe from our download window. And this will start our actual installation process. So we'll go ahead and install the Smart Console application inside of our Windows host here, and then we'll log in and look at our rule base and attempt to push a security policy just to do a quick verification of what's going on. So while this is running here, we're go ahead and it's a good idea to go ahead and run this and install the newest version of Smart Console. And in this case, again, it's for R77.10. So we're actually going to get this started, and then I want to talk about one additional option when we talk about upgrades for CheckPoint Gaia. What we've done in the past, and one thing that what you need for this particular version is the actual Microsoft Visual C++ package, and it'll actually reach out to the internet and get that for you as long as you're on an internet connected machine. So that's perfectly normal to have it do that for you. And now it's just preparing the actual installation process. So we may get a couple other prompts here as it starts up the actual CheckPoint Smart Console install. And we'll select next, and I accept, and next again. And we'll install it, the full actual package. We'll choose install, and we'll let this start to run. Now, as I was saying, the one thing that we want to talk about for the actual Gaia upgrades, what we've done up to this point is actually finding the TGZ files or finding the ISO files directly from the CheckPoint website and then uploading it to the actual platform that we're upgrading. Now with the CheckPoint Gaia R77.10 package, we now have something really cool available to us where we never have to do that kind of action again. CheckPoint has realized that, like their appliance upgrades as well as any open server upgrade, we could say, upgrading process has always been a real pain for people, and it's always created a ton of service support tickets into their attacks. And the reason why is my own personal opinion states that there's just too many versions. There's just too many versions that basically allow people to choose different options and different feature sets that are available. Because for one version you may have R75, R75.10, 20, 30, 40, a virtual edition, a VX edition, a high platform edition, a routing edition. So Checkpoint realized that they need these features to support their customer needs, but they need to give us a better option for upgrades. And that's what's actually available inside the Gaia portal now, and I want to show us before we complete this module. So what we're going to do is go ahead and scroll down on your left hand side here, and you want to make sure you're under Advanced. And under the Advanced menu, you can go ahead and grab this actual bar and pull it down for you. And you go all the way to the bottom. There's an area right here for for software updates. So the first thing we're going to select is Status and Actions. And what this actually is through the Gaia portal, it will automatically reach out to Checkpoint, locate all the available packages, all the available hot fixes, and everything that you need to keep your security gateway up to the latest patches, as well as to fix any latest vulnerabilities that hit the market, is fully integrated inside your Gaia portal. So no longer do you have to go to the Checkpoint website and search for updates and then download the package and upload it to your machine via FTP or mounting an ISO file or using some other types of options. In our case, we're using VMware, so we're actually mounting the ISO file to our VM. Now you can do this all via the web page, and it's all configured and integrated with your Checkpoint Gaia portal. Now, if you're running on VMware, it's going to work for you. It'll also work for an open server or any of the Checkpoint appliances that are out there. It all works exactly the same on Gaia. So what features do we have available here? We have some pretty strong and wonderful options here. So any of the new hot fixes that are out for Checkpoint, if you want to see if there's for certain areas or certain things, you can actually see them right here. And here's a description, and you can actually click on this description and it'll take you over to the Checkpoint Secure Knowledge article that supports this particular software package. And we also have the option here at the top for actions where we can import or we can add a private hotfix if Checkpoint gave us one. Maybe we placed a TAC call for some really weird behavior. We can add a private hotfix here. So it actually makes the upgrade and installation process pretty easy going forward once you get past the R77.10 and into the future as we reach out to R80, which is around the corner, probably early part or late part of 2014. We'll see early part of 15, late part of 14, we'll see actually R80 available as an actual software package from Checkpoint. But as you can see, this makes it pretty easy. No longer do we have to jump out for all the various options out there. And we can see that we have just a wealth of information here. So if we want to go ahead and download a package, we can actually select it here and then select the download options to download it. And then once it's downloaded, we can actually install it. And here at the top, we actually have full images. So full packages that we can download. If we want to pull something down for R76 to do a fresh install, R77.10, or in R75.40, all the various packages are here. We can download these packages and perform a clean install or an upgrade to our existing Gaia installation. So that makes great sense for us, and it's going to be really wonderful and really easy in the future to upgrade Checkpoint products. I wanted to go ahead and show you this just so you're familiar with it. As you get to the R77.10, and if you go to the .20, .30, .40, go ahead and perform the actual upgrade using the Checkpoint Services update engine, because this is actually what's recommended by Checkpoint now for upgrading your Checkpoint appliances and your open servers, your VMs, whatever you may have, is to use the actual integrated upgrade utility that's inside your Gaia portal. Alright, so that pretty much takes care of that option there. And the last thing we have here is our Smart Console is completed. So we're going to go ahead and log in as admin. And again, it's going to be our same password information we've always used. And we're going to log into the external IP, which is 10.1.1.254. And we'll go ahead and hit OK here. Go ahead and approve our fingerprint. And this will actually log us in And in theory, what we should see here is basically everything we had before as far as rules and everything. We're going to go ahead and tell it that we're going to use our trial package here for the licensing. And this is exactly what we should have available to us in this particular setup for our standalone setup for Chicago. Again, the package and the dashboard is a little different. We're familiar with that from what we've seen in our previous modules. At this point, we can go ahead and close off of this option for threat emulation. So let me go ahead and close that. Now, what I'm really curious to see is that it has already recognized our Chicago firewall. It's running R77.10 and has the standard policy package applied. And under policy, that's exactly what we should see. It gives us our management rules, our stealth rules, our network access rules, and our MBT and our cleanup rules. Exactly what we had on the R75.40. Through the upgrade process, we carried everything over. And the last part of the installation I want to try for this module is to actually try to push a security policy out. Now that we've upgraded the OS to Gaia, we've upgraded the actual checkpoint release to R77.10. So now we're going to push a security policy out to our standalone firewall. And if this installs successfully, we've completed our task, we've upgraded our environment, and we should be in wonderful shape going forward. So as we can see, it's installing and success. It says we have completed successfully installing our upgraded security policy, and we're continuing to pass traffic for our Chicago site just like we did before. So as we can see, the upgrade process, there's a few steps to it, but it's really not that bad. As long as we follow along the prerequisites that I've recommended to you, there should be no reason at all should you need to place a TAC call for something that, bombed out for you. So let's go ahead and continue on from here, and I'll see everyone in the next module. Alright, my friends, we've made it to the end of the standalone upgrade process for this module from Secure Platform to Gaia. And I'm very proud of everyone for sticking with me, working through the lab, and understanding exactly what you need to know to administer an upgrade process from Secure Platform to Gaia. So you've learned some key skills, and you're ready to take on that task when it's presented to you by a new employer, a contract position, or even in your current job as a security administrator. So in this module, let's look at a quick recap of what we covered. So the first thing we covered was a backup of our management database using the upgrade export process. The next thing that we looked at once we had that good solid backup is we went ahead and located our upgrade package on the Checkpoint website. And once we upgraded that package, or we located it, we went ahead and transferred that upgrade package over to our Chicago firewall, which is running in our virtual machine. And then on the actual Chicago firewall, we created a directory via the make directory command, and we extracted that package inside of that directory in the var directory. The next thing we did was to go ahead and issue the /Unix install script, and that executed the actual install process for the upgrade. So not only did we upgrade the operating system, we also upgraded our checkpoint deployment as well as part of this upgrade. And that's one thing you're going to see. It's going to be a two-part deployment for most people. When you're coming from Secure Platform to Gaia, you can upgrade everything in one good step, which is awesome. The next thing that we performed was an actual reboot of our virtual machine. And once that was rebooted, we went in and did some OS verification. We made sure our checkpoint products had upgraded and that we were basically where we were before we started. So I hope you learned a ton of great information in this module, and let's continue on from here, and I'll see you in the next module. Welcome to Pluralsight. I'm Bobby Metter, and welcome to the module on Gaia upgrades. So you're already on a Gaia operating system, maybe it's R76 or early on R77, and you need to go ahead and get to the latest version for R7720 or R7730 or even R80, which is just around the corner. So in this module, we're going to see exactly what you need to do to take a Gaia operating system or running in a distributed or a standalone deployment. It's exactly the same. We follow the same steps to perform the actual upgrade process from Gaia. So let's look at some of the steps we're going to see in this module. So the upgrade steps that we're going to see, we're going to review our upgrade wizard again to locate our correct package. We'll back up our current checkpoint configuration. We'll access our Gaia web UI and we'll upload the actual upgrade package into that web page. We'll start the upgrade process and we'll follow all the prompts on the web page. And then we'll reboot our actual virtual machine and verify that our checkpoint upgrade went well for the operating system and that our checkpoint software is working as expected. And finally, we will deploy policy to all of our firewalls. So those are the steps we're going to see in this module. So let's continue on from here and check out how do we upgrade Gaia to a newer version of Gaia. So let's check out our process for upgrading our Gaia operating system. As we can see, our Salt Lake City firewall is running R76 on Gaia currently. So we want to see the process of performing an actual Gaia upgrade in this module. So what we're going to do is log in as admin. And once we log in, we're going to go to the section where we can make some options for upgrading the operating system. Now, we're not going to perform any backup operations at this point because we're going to cover that extensively in other modules in this series. But what we're going to do now is we're just going to basically look at the upgrade process. So Gaia presents us with some really nice options. We have the opportunity where we can perform our upgrades directly from the website. And in future versions, we can actually perform those upgrades directly from CheckPoint, which is something really awesome as well that we're going to see. So what we can do at this point is we need to be in the advanced mode section right here. And then we're going to scroll down. And once we scroll down, we have an option toward the bottom under our actual maintenance area for upgrades. So we're going to select upgrades. And now that we're in upgrades, what we can do is actually upload the package. So I have the actual package already uploaded on my machine here. It just happens to be in this directory right here. It's the R77 Gaia package. And notice we took the TGZ version. So that's the version you're going to want to use. Instead of an ISO file, we need the tar gunzip version. Alright, so we can see it's in C Users Administrator. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that location so I know exactly where it's at. I'm going to select back on our Gaia portal here. And I'm going to tell it that I want to go into upgrades. And under upgrades, we're going to select to upgrade a package or upload a package. We're going to browse. And once we do the browse on that particular package, we'll choose the C drive. We're going to choose users and then administrators. And then the CheckPoint R77 package is right here. So we'll select that. And then we'll select upload. Now, as we can see, the upload process is going to take a little bit. So this is pretty much what you need to know at this point. So we'll let it go ahead and complete the upload process. It'll take between 5 and 10 minutes depending on the speed of your network and the size of the package. So once this completes, we'll come back, we'll get into the rest of the options for upgrading our Gaia operating system. So now we can see that our R77 upload package has completed successfully. So we're going to start our actual upgrade process. So the first thing we want to do on this side of the configuration is to click on the actual package and then we'll select the upgrade option. And as we can see, it tells us to please wait a few moments while the upgrade package is extracted. So it's going to take that tar gunzip or TGZ file and go ahead and perform the tar actions on it to extract all the different packages, patches, and all the new operating system features for R77 for Gaia. So let's give it a few minutes here, and once it gets through this process, it's going to present us with the window that will allow us to start the actual upgrade process. The nice thing that we'll see about Gaia is the upgrade process is pretty much purely GUI in the nice options that it gives us, because it doesn't leave us wondering if the configuration is done. If it's just setting on a command prompt, maybe we may wonder if the configuration completed or if the upgrade completed successfully. So let's go ahead and pause for a moment. We'll let it go ahead and get through this process. And on the larger packages like this, it could take a little bit. This is over a gig for the upgrade to R77. So it's going to have to go through the process of extracting all this. We'll pause for a moment, come back, and then we'll check it out and continue on from here. So the package is extracted now. So we'll go ahead and select the R77 checkpoint sweep. At this point, it's in our window, so we'll go ahead and select OK at this point. And as we can see, we get like a command prompt window and ask us, do we want to perform a snapshot? Now, the snapshot can take some time in some production environments. It may be a good idea for you to do so, but in our environment, being a test environment, we don't have to do so. So we're going to hit N for no. We'll hit enter at this point. And then what it'll do is it'll ask us, you're about to start the R77 upgrade. Are you sure we want to continue? We'll say Y at this point for yes, and we'll hit enter. So once we hit enter here, it's going to start the actual installation process. Now this installation process will take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. Again, depending on the speed of your system and your read and write speed, data space, and the amount of processors and cores you have dedicated to your firewall solution. So at this point, let's go ahead and just let it continue on from here. We'll come back and you're going to see a few options as it starts the actual installation process. There's really nothing more we need to do other than at the very end it's going to reboot after it performs the R77 installation. So we'll pause here for a moment. We'll come back and let you see the last step of the upgrade process. And as you're doing this in your own lab for practice, you'll get a great understanding for everything that we're seeing here. And as we can see, it's pretty seamless and it works pretty easily without a lot of effort on your part as the administrator. As we're going through the actual upgrade process, we can see that it's starting the pre-upgrade verification, it's loading the kernel parameters, then it's going to go into upgrading the actual operating system as well as the CheckPoint products. And as we can see, it says performing the products upgrade at this point. I wanted you to see just a screenshot or a snapshot of what's going on in this area of the process. So it'll complete the actual products configuration and upgrades, and then we're complete at that point. We can reboot our firewall or management server platform at that point on Gaia. And then once we reboot, we'll be fully running the R77 operating system. So let's let it wrap this up, and then we'll see the last part where we actually reboot the solution and go forward from there. Once our upgrade operation is finished up, we'll see that it says please wait while the system is rebooting. So it'll go through the process of rebooting your actual system, and once it comes up, then you'll be able to log back into the Gaia web UI, and it'll indicate that it's running the R77 operating system for Gaia. So we'll give it a couple minutes, let it complete this, and we'll log back into the GUI and let you see those operations as well. So our upgrade operation has completed at this point. So we're in great shape. So it says the Gaia portal for R77. And as we select it, we can actually log in as our administrator account again. And what we'll see is that we pretty much have the same operations we did on R76, but the upgrade process has completed successfully for us. So as we can see that there's not a whole lot there. There's not a lot of options that will take on the actual Gaia upgrade process, but it goes through the process pretty seamlessly. You're going to see that at this point, if we go down to the actual upgrade options under the advanced area and we select that, we still have this package available. If you want to leave it here, you can. But if you've already upgraded it and you want to just save the hard drive space, you can highlight this package and go ahead and delete it. After you've completed the upgrade process, you will no longer need this upgrade package. So you can delete it, and as you can see, you'll regain that hard drive space. So that's pretty much it. As we can see, upgrading from Gaia is not that hard of a task, and it's easily attainable and really easy to complete. They're within about 20 to 25 minutes total, depending on the speed of your system. So we'll continue on from here. I'm going to go ahead and upgrade our actual management server, and at that point we'll have both of our package for our Salt Lake City firewall and management server up to R77, and at that point we should be good to go. So we'll continue on from here and check out some additional options in the future modules. So we've completed our upgrade of our Gaia operating system, and let's look at a quick recap of the steps that we covered in this particular module. So the first thing we did is we did a review of the upgrade wizard to locate the correct package. Then we went ahead and did a backup of the current checkpoint configuration to make sure everything was nicely backed up. So if we ran into any issues, we would have a backup file. Then we looked at using the Gaia web UI to upload the package. And once we uploaded the package, we started the upgrade process via the website there. We followed all the prompts that were available to get the upgrade package installed. And then finally, we went ahead and rebooted our virtual machine. We ran through some verification steps to make sure our operating system as well as our CheckPoint software was working as expected, and we also deployed policy out to our firewalls. So we learned some wonderful information that will help us out when upgrading from Gaia to Gaia. Let's continue on from here, and I'll see you in the next module. Welcome to Pluralsight. I'm Bobby Metter, and you're watching the module on the Secure Platform Backup. In this module, we're going to see the steps that you need to know in order to make sure that our Secure Platform operating system is always backed up and it's always available should anything bad happen to our environment. So let's look at the steps we're going to go through throughout this module. I want to give you just a kind of a preview of things that you'll see, and let's check that out now. So inside the module, we need to look at our backup steps. So the first thing we want to look at, or we're going to review our GUI backup options. So what can we do from a web page in order to back up our actual Secure Platform operating system? Then we're going to configure some local backup options. Then we'll look at configuring a scheduled backup option, which I highly recommend. Then we'll review the command line options for the backups. We can locate the backup location process inside the Secure Platform operating system. And then we will review an upgrade export process. We will also look at locating the upgrade tools for the next version of code that you want to go to. So again, some very key skills. So let's continue on from here and check out our Secure Platform or our Splat backup. So let's check out our options for our Secure Platform backup. The Secure Platform backup process is pretty important. Again, a lot of people are still running Secure Platform. You're not going to automatically get away from this particular operating system with the release of the Gaia OS because in a lot of cases it's running perfectly fine and there's no real reason for many of your customers out there to change their operating system. If you're doing a new deployment or if there's some features that you see in Gaia that you really want, that may warrant an actual upgrade process. But for the customers that are perfectly happy with Secure Platform, CheckPoint will continue to support those customers. So it's good for us to know about the backup operations that are available to make sure if something goes wrong, you have an option to restore the network environment of someone who's running Secure Platform. So as we can see, we've logged in to our GUI web UI interface on our Chicago firewall. We can see all the information here. We can see that it's running our Secure Platform operating system. And in this case, it was R75.40 that we deployed for Chicago. So what we want to do at this point to look at the GUI options for backup is to go ahead and select the device area. And under the device area, there's an option here where we can actually select backup. Now under backup, we have a few options here. We can actually perform a backup operation right now, or we can set up a scheduled backup. So let's review both of those. So the first thing we want to do, we're going to say backup now, and we have some options here. We can back it up to a TFTP server, an SCP server, a FTP server, and we can also include the CheckPoint log files in the backup. I would highly recommend not doing that because it can increase the size of your backup dramatically if you have a lot of CheckPoint log files for the SmartView tracker traffic in your FW log file. Easily, if you need this, it's an option at some point to extract this information before you actually perform a backup of the core operating system route tables and inspect tables, as well as the firewall rules and users and administrators and everything else that makes up the firewall and management service solution that you're working with. So I usually do not include the log files because it just really grows the size of the backup file, and it's really not necessary in most cases. So what we're going to do is we're going to perform the backup to this device. So we'll select this device and we'll click apply. And let's take a look at this little pop-up, and it says this operation will back up your configuration settings. Please be sure that your GUI clients are disconnected from Smart Center. So what does that mean? If you're in Smart Dashboard, Smart View Tracker, Smart View Monitor, Smart Update, or any of the actual smart tools that we use to manage our platform, make sure you're logged out of them. And if you have any administrators out there, usually it'll kick them out, but it's just a good idea before we try the backup operation that we disconnect all those GUI clients from your management server. And if it's a firewall, not so much of an issue, but if it's a standalone deployment like what we have for Chicago, we want to make sure we're out of all those GUI tools. So we'll select yes at this point, and what we'll see is that it's performing the process. So you don't really see a whole lot on this screen, but you can click on the backup log, and as we can see, it tells us the date, it gives us the time, it tells us it's in process of the backup. So one thing you can also do is here at the top, you can click the refresh button ever so often, and it'll actually tell you pinpoint the time and the moment that it finishes up the actual backup process. It gives you a nice little GUI and it tells you that it's in process, so that works well for you. So what you can do, just take a moment, let it complete this backup process, and that'll take care of what we can do from a backup standpoint from our secure platform GUI window. So now that we've completed the actual local backup of our secure platform operating system, let's look at the scheduled backup operations that you can do. Now I recommend most people perform this scheduled backup on a Friday evening after your work week. Usually all your firewall changes are going to be made from Monday through Thursday of the work week, and then Friday night at midnight is the perfect time to back up your management server as well as your firewall operations as well. So we'll go ahead and click on Scheduled Backup, and we're going to tell it to enable the backup reoccurrence. At midnight is perfectly fine, and we want to make sure that we select this to be on Friday. So I have mine set to Friday right here, and then I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to actually perform an FTP operations to this IP address to go ahead and push that actual backup process out to an FTP server. So should something happen to my secure platform management server or firewall, that backup is actually kept on another server. So I can build a new server with the same host name and IP, and then just restore that backup file and be exactly where I was prior to that crash of the OS. So at this point, we're in good shape. At this point, you would just go ahead and click Apply. And once you click Apply, you'll see the scheduling area here. This will go green, and it says Enabled. So that takes care of everything you need to know from a GUI standpoint for performing the backups on your secure platform operating system. So the next part of the module, we're going to look at the command line options that are available for your secure platform operating system. So let's pause for now, and we'll check out the options through PuTTY on the CLI next. Now it's time for us to review our command line options for backing up our secure platform operating system. So what we're going to do now is we're going to connect over to our Chicago firewall site, and we're going to do that via the command line using the PuTTY application. Now the PuTTY application is a terminal program that we'll use to either SSH, Telnet, or Serial connect into a network device or a server, for example. So now we're going to go ahead and open up our Chicago firewall site. So we'll load that. And again, we're connecting on the outside IP address of 10.1.1.254. And we'll log in as admin. So once we log in to our server here, we'll go ahead and jump over to expert mode. And once we log in as expert, that'll give us a little bit more access to the operating system. So what we're going to do is go ahead and issue a clear command at this point, and now what we see is we have a clean slate here. Now the first thing we want to know about when backing up our secure platform operating system is the backup command. The backup command is going to be our single command for backing up everything in secure platform as well as your Gaia operating system. So it's equally great knowledge to know for secure platform as well as Gaia. So you'll continue to use this even as you upgrade into the newer operating systems from CheckPoint. So let's go ahead and issue a backup command. So as we issue this backup command, we'll get some notes here on the screen. It'll tell us that note that when creating the backup, it can take up to 20 minutes, and all CheckPoint products will be stopped and restarted after the backup completes. And ask us, are we sure we want to proceed? So we'll say yes to this, and that'll start the backup process. In most environments, this will take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the size of your install and how many security rules and NAT rules, and as well how big your user database is if you're using a standalone setup or on a management server like we are for our Chicago firewall site. So So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and pause for a moment, let it go ahead and complete the backup process, create the backup file. Then we'll come back and pick it up exactly where we'll see that the backup file has completed. So we can see our backup package completed successfully. It gives us an indication that it's done. So we're in great shape. So what we want to do now is go ahead and issue a clear again, just to clear the slate a little bit. And now we want to look at the location of where does that backup file live at. It's actually under the CD, and we're going to change directory over to the /var directory. So under var, what we're going to look for is in the CP backup directory. And then inside of there, there's a file or a location known as backups. So that location for your backup, if you're ever looking for it, is going to be a change directory over to /var CP backup /backups. So now that we're in that directory, if we do a ls, we'll see that we have our backup files. Now our backup files are basically here, and this is exactly what we created for this particular module. Now if we ever want to restore a backup, just in case someone made a mistake, someone made some changes, they deleted some firewall rules, they deleted a user account, or if you had a system crash or something and you need to restore something, this backup file can be used for that. Now there's a command that we can use known as the restore command. So let's take a look at that now. So now that we know the location of where the backup files live, let's see how we can restore them. So if we type in restore and we hit enter, we get a nice little wizard. Now this wizard gives us some options, and what we end up using are the capital letters on the left here. And as we can see, L is to restore a local backup. So if we need to restore a local backup, we use a capital L. If we want to import that backup from a TFTP, SCP, or an FTP server, all those options are available with their capital letters. Now, if we want to remove a backup package, that's where we use the capital R. So, for example, if we hit R and we tell it we want to restore one, currently I have 2 backup packages on this particular firewall. Now, if I want to remove one of them, let's say we're going to remove option 2, we'll hit enter, and that'll remove that package. Now, if we want to restore, again, we'll use the capital L. So if we use the capital L, we would hit option number 1 to restore that backup, and that would put the system back to exactly that time and date when you wanted to restore any of your previous changes, or just to get the database back to a known good state, you would put it in that location. So now that we have that in place and we know how to back up our system, and we also know how to restore our system, we're in great shape there. Now the next thing that you need to know about for backing up your secure platform operating system is a application and a option known as the upgrade export. Now the upgrade export is very valuable. It's really going to help you to back up your user database. It's useful for management servers, particularly if you're in a distributed or a standalone setup like we are. Upgrade export is going to be one of your best friends. So let's go ahead and type in Q here, and we'll get out of this option for now. And we'll clean our slate again. And now the next thing we want to do is look at the upgrade directory for the upgrade export. Now again, the upgrade export is going to be used to back up all your user accounts, any of your security rules, your NAT rules, your IPS settings, VPN settings for both site-to-site and remote access, and pretty much anything that you configure for your CheckPoint environment inside of the dashboard application is going to be kept inside of an upgrade export. So it's really useful for whenever you're migrating to new platforms, or if you're wanting to test a upgrade scenario, or to test a new feature that you don't want to implement on a production environment because you're kind of worried about the process of what kind of change that will affect on the environment, and you just really don't want to cause any problems to the environment before you thoroughly test it. Upgrade export's an excellent option for doing that. So what we're going to do is we're going to change directory over to the $fwdir/bin, and under the bin directory there's a directory known as the upgrade_tools directory. So inside of here we'll type in upgrade, or UP, and then we'll hit our tab to complete the word for us, and we'll go over to the tools directory. So again, we can see that particular $fwdir actually equals the location on the hard drive /opt/cp suite R76 FW1 bin and then upgrade underscore tools. So as we can see, that's just a symbolic link of $FWDIR over to this directory we're looking at. So nothing really you need to know beyond just general knowledge, but this is the location we're going to on the hard drive. Once we get into this location and we do an ls, we see some options here. But the two we want to talk about for now are the upgrade export and the upgrade import. This is how, like we said, we can take a snapshot of what's running on the management server in order to allow us to do some of those tasks if we want to go to a new piece of hardware for management, or if in this case like a standalone like we are on our Chicago firewall site, we want to migrate the entire setup over to a new setup or a new piece of hardware or a new virtual machine. This is how we'll do it. And that's where upgrade export is very valuable. So let's see how we run that. So what we need to do is we'll do a / and then we'll type in upgrade. And we can use our tab underscore export. And then we need to give it a file name. So in this case, we're going to call it original.tgz. It has to be in a tar gunzip format. So we'll call ours orig.tgz. So we'll hit enter here. And as we can see, it says you're required to close all clients from the security management server. So if you have any of the smart dashboards, smart view tracker, smart update, any of the GUI tools open, you'll need to close those before you stop this. Or it tells you to execute a CP stop to kick everybody out. But for now, we'll go ahead and say yes to this, that we want to continue. And what we'll see is that it's going to copy the required files here. Now, as we're copying this over, this is a good time to talk about the use of the upgrade export into making sure you're providing some overall protection for your environment. I recommend to most people running an upgrade export at least monthly. Maybe on the last day of the month is a good day to do it. Is to set it up, and maybe a calendar reminder to come in and do this. There are some scripting options that are available out there from CheckPoint, but that gets a little bit more into the scope of what I want to just show you here for basically administering the tool. Now, what I typically do is, I set a calendar reminder to come in on the 24th, 28th of the month and go ahead and run this on my production environment. And what it'll do, like we said, the operation in this case has completed successfully for us. But it also tells us the location of the archive with the exported database, which is awesome. So we can see in that same directory of /opt, CP Suite R76, Firewall 1, bin, and then upgrade underscore tools, we find our original.tgz file. So if we look at that at this point and we do a ls, we'll see that it's located inside the same directory right here. So the original.tgz. So this is our upgrade export file. Now, in the case that we have some type of problem occur, someone makes changes, someone deletes a user account or modifies a particular VPN connection, and they're not sure exactly what they modified, either restoring from the backup, but also you can restore from the upgrade export as well if you have a recent one of those. And it'll really be helpful for if you ever have a disaster scenario and you need some help and you call into the CheckPoint TAC. If you can tell them that you have an upgrade export from, a week ago, a month ago, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be able to get you up and running within an hour. And you'll be back to exactly where you were before. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do now is to see how do we restore this option. So if we do a /upgrade underscore import, we can actually import that file. So if we want to run that, we'll go ahead and run it and we'll see exactly what we get here. So as we can see, it's extracting the database. So what it will do, like we talked about, is it'll extract the database and restore it exactly to where you were when you produce the upgrade export. Now the upgrade import will basically tell us that the import operation will stop all of our CheckPoint services, and it asks us, do we want to continue? So we'll say yes to this for now and go ahead and let it to do that. And as we can see, it will go through and stop all the particular services that are available for SmartView Reporter, the management server process, the Firewall 1 daemon, the FWD daemon. Everything will pretty much be stopped on the machine. And as we can see, it'll get to the point here where it actually says importing files. So we'll go ahead and pause for a moment here and let it go ahead and complete that option. Again, typically if you're going to be doing an upgrade import, you're not doing it on a production window. So you need to ask for a change window, and you need to possibly do it in a test environment before you try to implement it on your production management server. It's just always really good to check twice and implement one time just to make sure that there's no problems. There's nothing worse than knowing that you did something to the management server and you're struggling to get it to work properly. And that's why I typically run a lot of my production environments. I run a test in a virtual machine like we're doing here in this particular module, just to make sure things are going to work the way I expect them to. Most of the time you're going to have zero flaws, but it's good to know that you tested the process before you tried it on your production VM or your production server. As we can see right now, it does say importing the files, so we should be in good shape here. And after the import completes, it will go ahead and tell us that the operation is completed successfully. And one thing that I like to do after I import the files, I like to go ahead and reboot your management server. Is it absolutely necessary? No, but it's just something that I've always done as an option for importing the files. I just like to give everything a fresh restart to make sure it works effectively. And what it asks us here is, it says the import operation did complete successfully. And now it says, do we want to start the checkpoint services? So we're going to say yes to this just by hitting enter, and that'll start the checkpoint services up for us. So once this starts up and you're in good shape now, this will actually basically get us back to a prompt here where we can take a look at the system. So again, depending on the speed of your system, how many CPU cores you have, how much RAM you have, and the speed of your hard drives, your time will vary when starting up the checkpoint processes. And for me, this is running in a virtual machine, so it's going to be just a little bit slower than it would be on a production machine or a production ESXi VMware install, for example. So as we can see, as it starts up the services, sometimes whenever it restarts those services, the default filter will kick in and it'll actually kill your SSH session. So something to know. That's probably what's happening in this case, and this is kind of what you'll see as well. You'll just get a solid cursor on your command line window, and usually you can restart a duplicate session and log back in. So let's take a look at that. So what we want to do is go ahead and right click on this, and we'll tell it duplicate session. And again, we'll get our login prompt, so we'll log in as admin. And once we log in, we're back in. So as we can see, everything's working as expected for us. We'll go back into expert mode. And what we're going to do is go ahead and close the one in the back. And we'll go ahead and maximize this one. So as we can see, everything looks great. So at this point, we know exactly what to do with our backup command. We see our upgrade export directory works as expected. We can do an upgrade export. We've done our upgrade import. We can restore our database the way that we want it. Now the next thing for us to look at as a checkpoint administrator from the command line is an option known as the snapshot. Now the snapshot is basically a bare metal backup of exactly everything that's running on the system. And in this case, ours is a standalone setup, so we have our firewall as well as our management server in place. And if we want to migrate that to a like-for-like system, maybe your environment, you have Dell or HP servers or Cisco UCS, for example, and these are the standards that your company uses for all their servers. Using an actual snapshot will allow you to basically pick up everything and restore on that particular server without having to worry about driver issues or any other options that would pop up as you present hardware changes into your environment. So typically a snapshot, like I said, is used for a like-to-like comparison or a bare metal backup, sometimes people will say. So what we're going to do is go ahead and type in snapshot so we can see what's available. And it tells us here we can use the capital L to create a local snapshot. And again, we can create a new snapshot image on a TFTP, SCP, FTP, or we can remove a local snapshot. So what we're going to do is go ahead and hit option L that we want to create a local snapshot. Again, I'll be honest, I don't use snapshots a whole lot because it can take a significant amount of time to create those. But if you're looking for a bit-by-bit comparison to what one system had before on a driver or a hardware level, snapshot is going to be your option. Again, like I said, you can use this option, but again, it is going to take some time. So what we're going to do is hit option number L, and it says enter an actual image name. We're going to accept the defaults here and hit enter, and it tells us that note that creating the backup can take up to 20 minutes, and all CheckPoint products will be stopped and restarted after the backup completes. So what we want to do is go ahead and say yes to this, and it says, are you sure you want to proceed? We'll hit enter to this, and now it's going to create the snapshot backup for us. Again, this can take anywhere from 20 minutes to 30 minutes depending on the size of your database. So basically we're going to continue from here, pause for a moment, and let it complete the actual snapshot process. So now we can see that our snapshot operation has completed successfully. Looking at the option for O right here, we see we can override our current snapshot image, and it gives us the name of the current snapshot. Now in the situation where we need to revert onto like hardware or like VM, and we want to revert a snapshot, we use the revert command to install that snapshot. So what we can do at this point, we can hit Q to quit, and then we'll go ahead and clear our screen here. Then as we type in revert, we get some options to revert from a local snapshot image. If we hit capital L, we see the snapshot image as an option. We can hit Q to quit, but if we want to go ahead and get rid of one just to get some hard drive space back, we'll use our capital R, and then it'll ask us which particular snapshot do we want to get rid of. In this case, we'll hit option 1, and as we can see, what it'll do is just regain that hard drive space for you. So now that that's done, we can hit Q to quit. And that pretty much wraps up everything I wanted everyone to see on the command line for backing up your secure platform operating system. The last thing that I want to show you in this particular module is an upgrade tool option on the CheckPoint website. If you're going from an older version to a newer version, you'll need to use the upgrade tools that are available for the version that you're upgrading to. So let's pause for a moment. We'll come back and check out that option on the CheckPoint website, and then that'll wrap up our module. So we can see we're on checkpoint.com right now, and I wanted to show you the additional upgrade tools that are available if you're upgrading from a previous version to a newer version. And this kind of ties in the upgrade import and the upgrade export operations that we saw in this module. I wanted to see and also tell you exactly where to find those options if you're upgrading to a newer version. So once we get to checkpoint.com, we're going to click on support, and under support it'll bring us to the support center. And under the support center, if we're looking for a newer version that we're wanting to upgrade to, we type in a capital R and then the version we're working with. In this case it's R77, and what we'll look at are the actual migration tools. So the R77 migration tools will basically give you the operations and the options to do the upgrade import or the upgrade export script for a newer version of code. So what we'll look at, as we scroll down here, we see an option right here for the R77 management server migration tools for secure platform, Red Hat, Enterprise Linux 5 and 5.4, and Gaia. That's the operation or the option we want to choose. So we'll choose that, and as we can see, this is the actual file name. And this file name, you would basically download this and then FTP or SCP or something to get it over to your current secure platform system. Extract the contents, and once you extract those via tar-xzvf and then the file name, that'll extract it into that directory, and you'll have the same information in that directory that we saw previously in this module under upgrade tools. But the upgrade tools that are available there will be for a newer version of code. So you'll still see the upgrade import and the upgrade export options like we saw previously, but it'll just be for a newer version of code, in this case being R77. So I want to go ahead and make sure I showed that bit of information to everyone before we left the module. So we'll just continue on from here, and I hope you learned a ton of great information in this module. In this module, we saw some great steps for backing up our secure platform operating system. So let's review those steps that we went through in this module. The first thing we looked at were as an actual review of our GUI backup options. So what can we do from a web page to back up our secure platform operating system? We looked at configuring local backup options, which will give us the ability just to save it locally on the hard drive. We saw how to set up a scheduled backup option. We reviewed the command line options for performing a backup. We also looked at the backup location inside the secure platform operating system so we can locate our backup files. We saw the option of using an upgrade export and how important that tool is to make sure we take a snapshot of what's going on in our management server. And finally, we upgraded our tools for the next version we want to go to inside of the Checkpoint website. So let's continue on from here, and I'll see you in the next module. So now it's time for us to check out the options for backing up our Gaia operating system. We're going to perform the backup options on our Chicago firewall site. This is our standalone firewall. So we have our Gaia portal here. So let's log in and look at the GUI options that are available. And then we'll look at the command line options that are available for backing up your Gaia operating system. So let's log in as admin. And once you log in as admin, it'll be the same default password that we've always used for installing the products as well. In this case, I use VPN123 as a default password, but you can use whatever you want. Of course, in a production environment, make sure it's much more secure. At least 8 characters, special characters, upper and lower. Make sure you use numbers as well. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and say yes to save this password for now. It tells us that the configuration lock is locked, and that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and click the lock button at the top to grab it. Now that we're inside the Gaia operating system, we can see that we're on our Chicago firewall site, and we're running this on VMware, so that's identified as well. What we need to do is to scroll down on the left hand side here until we get under the options for maintenance. And under the maintenance area, we have a couple options. We have a snapshot management, and we have system backup. Now, the snapshot management is basically taking a bit-by-bit copy of what's running on that hard drive. It's not just the Checkpoint processes. It will basically be a mirror image of what you have running there. So if you need to take it to a brand new piece of hardware that's exactly the same as you're currently running on, that's where snapshots can help you. The only downfall to a snapshot is it does take some time, and they can be quite large. And this is basically where we would perform that. And it does say creation of an additional image will require 4.928 gigabytes. The amount of space available on this image is 13 gigs. So as you can see, to create an entire snapshot, it's about 4 gigs for a base install of the Gaia operating system. Now, if we wanted to do that, we would just say new here, so we'll run through it temporarily. And it wants us to give us a name, and we can give it a description. But for now, for the sake of time, I'm going to hit cancel now. But if you ever need to do a bit-by-bit comparison and a backup of your operating system, your checkpoint rules, your firewalls, everything that's involved here, you can do a snapshot. Now, in my case, I don't use the snapshot feature a lot. It is there, and there's some value to it, but for me, it just takes way too long for it to work in the operating system. I prefer to use system backup, and upgrade exports is typically what I use whenever I'm backing up or administering a Checkpoint firewall. The options are there. It's good to know about it, but in my case, I don't use them a whole lot, but it's a usable feature. So the next thing we want to look at is the system backup. Now, the system backup is primarily, for me, the strongest way of backing up our secure platform as well as our Gaia operating system. So on the Gaia operating system, what we want to do is go ahead and perform a backup. So we have some options here for backup. We can delete, we can restore backup, restore a remote backup if it's on another file server. We can import, export, view logs, or view our last backup. So what we're going to choose now, we're going to choose backup. And we're going to tell it it's going to be a local backup. So we're going to choose this appliance. But we also have the option to SCP this off automatically or send it over to an FTP server. But for now, I'm just going to use this appliance. So I'll choose backup. And as we see the status here, and it says performing a local backup. It's going to create and compress the backup file. So generally this will take anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes depending on the size of your configuration. If you're running this on a checkpoint management server and you have several hundred rules and several thousand objects, your time may be much longer because of the size of your database. Now for me, it's roughly, it says about 4 gigs is the size of our particular database. But as we can see, it's executing the post backup and we're done. And it says finish the backup. Backup was finished successfully, and the backup was finished in about 30 seconds. So it's really good on ours. The backup type is a local backup, but it also tells us, so we want to pay attention here. The backup file is saved to the /var/cp backup, backups, and then this is the file name. So that's basically what you want to need to know from the GUI aspect of performing the backup on your Gaia operating system. And it's good to know about this particular location here, because this is what we'll visit in a moment whenever we look at the command line options that are available for backup. So one other thing I want to do before we leave the GUI option is look at our options for creating scheduled backups. So under the actual backup window here, there's an option toward the bottom, and that's for a scheduled backup. Now I recommend in most environments that you're going to create your security rules typically between Monday and Thursday. So I always tell everyone that Friday night at midnight is an excellent time to back up your system, because most of the firewall changes and rules and everything have already been made for the week, and it's a good end of the week snapshot so you know exactly what you had on your firewall for that particular week. So I usually back mine up weekly, and I do it on Friday evening at 12, so Saturday morning. So we're going to go ahead and add a scheduled backup, and we need to give it a backup name. So I'm going to call this one our original, so ORIG backup. Is going to rename it to a .tgz, and that's perfectly fine. And I'm going to tell it that I want this to be done at a particular time. We'll say midnight, so we'll say 00 and then 00, so 12 midnight. And we'll add this backup file. Now as we can see, right now it says every day. If we want to modify this, we can come in and double click here on our scheduled backup, and let's see what options we have available here. So if we want to add it again and we want to modify this one, we could change it to daily, and you have some additional options where you can do it weekly and things like that. That you'll see with a little bit more real estate on your display settings. You'll see a couple more options there for weekly as well as a monthly option. But for now, that pretty much gives you the gist of how to create a scheduled backup. Now I highly recommend that you build your scheduled backup, and you do your scheduled backup on a weekly basis. Like I said, a Friday night, late evening, be a good time to make that snapshot. That way you know exactly what security rules you have. So at this point, we're in pretty good shape from here. So what we'll do now is I'm going to go ahead and open the terminal here from inside the Gaia operating system, which is a really cool option. I love this feature that was built into the Gaia OS. And let's log in as admin, and we'll use our password. Okay, so now that we're logged in here, I want to use our expert password. So we'll need to set that. So we'll do a set expert password, and we hit enter. And I like to set the expert password to be exactly the same password that you used when you were originally installing it. So your admin account, your CheckPoint admin account, the expert password, I keep all those same typically because it's easier to keep up with. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and, now that we're into this point of Gaia, we have our expert mode password set. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and type in expert, and we'll put in our expert mode password. And now it tells us, this is warning, all configuration should be done through CLISH. You are now in expert mode. Because of the changeover in the Gaia operating system, they really don't want you to do any of your configurations inside of the expert mode. You can do them in the previous mode like we've seen before. This is basically the CLISH shell right here. And if we do a question mark, you can see the various commands that are available. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and go into expert mode. And this just allows us to browse around the operating system in a much quicker fashion. And we're going to do a change directory to /var. And inside the var directory, that's where we're going to go to that directory we talked about for the CP backup. So we're going to go ahead and go into the var directory, and then we're going to do a cd to capital CP, and then if we tab, after we put the B in, we get the CP backup. So inside of here, we'll go ahead and issue a clear statement to go ahead and clear out the actual keyboard and just give you a little bit more real estate on the screen here. I like to do this occasionally just to make sure I have a clean slate. Okay, so now that we're here, if we do a ls, we'll see the files that are available. In this case, we want to go to backups. So let's cd to backups. And under the backups directory, if we do a ls here, we'll see our backup file. We'll see that it's for Chicago Firewall, .trainpros.net, and has the date on it, and it's a .tgz file. So that's basically our backup file, and that's where it's kept. So if we do a pwd, we can see that when we perform a backup on our secure platform as well as our Gaia operating system like we're talking about now, the backup file will be the /var/cp backup/backups. That's where we will find our backup file. So now that we have that in place, we can go ahead and exit out of here, and there's one other directory we want to take a look at. And that directory, as we go back into expert mode, is going to be inside the upgrade tools directory. Alright, so now that we're in the Chicago Firewall site, and what we want to do now is go ahead and we're going to pause for a moment here, and then we're going to come back and check out the upgrade tools directory. So now let's take a look at our additional backup options that are available via the command line. So we've already looked at the regular backup, and now I want to look at an option inside the upgrade tools directory known as the migrate export. Now we've talked about the upgrade export option throughout this particular module series, and that's still a viable option for the Gaia operating system. But whenever you're migrating to a newer OS or a different platform, or in the provider one or some of the larger products, when you migrate from a management server up to what's known as a CMA or customer management add-on, which we'll get into in a much later series on the provider one or multi-domain management product from CheckPoint. But pretty much the new way that CheckPoint wants us to be performing these types of migrations is using the migrate utility. So let's take a look at that now. So if we do a cd over to $fwdir, and then we'll go into the upgrade_tools directory, or we need to go into bin first, so let's go to bin, and now we're going to cd to the upgrade_tools directory. And again, we'll clear our slate and we'll do an ls to see what's in this directory. And this is where we see our migrate options. So we have a migrate option right here for this migrate command. And if we look at migrate and we do a /migrate, and we have some options here. So if we do a question mark, let's see what we get. Okay, so if we hit the question mark, we have a few options that we can run. We can do a migrate export or input SmartView tracker logs. We can get just those for an import or an export. We can run non-interactively with a /n. We can exclude the Postgres database and skip over our backup restore, the Postgres SQL that runs on the box. And we can export or import any endpoint connectivity MPI or MSI files. So if you're running the CheckPoint endpoint security package, you may have those MSL files available, and you can skip those. But it does say, note that run this utility either from the current directory or using an absolute path is what it tells us. So the options that I want to look at is for the /migrate, and the one I typically use for backing up a directory is the export command. So if we do the export command and we tab, actually it makes us type it out all the way, and we tell it original.tgz. Okay, and as we hit enter here, it says you're required to close all your security management server GUI windows, basically what it's talking about, your smart dashboard, smart view tracker, smart update, any of the GUI windows that you use in CheckPoint products, make sure those are closed. or you need to execute a CP stop to kick everyone out. But for us, we're going to say yes to now because I don't have any GUI options open. And we're going to hit yes. So what this is doing is copying the required files. It's going to compress the files. It's going to do pretty much the same thing that an upgrade export does for us, but it gives us a few more options, and it's the newer way of migrating from one platform for another. Let's say, for example, if you were running a R65 version of Secure Platform and you wanted to migrate up to a version of Gaia on R77. What we would do in that case, we would make sure we download the correct upgrade tools like we have talked about before from CheckPoint, put them in a directory on that particular machine, and then run the migrate utility to make that backup file. And then when we bring that backup file to an operating system like Gaia, like we're looking at, and we do our /migrate import, we would import the file and it would come through much easier with a lot less dependencies on any types of plugins or any errors. So it would be much more successful is what we're going for. But it does tell us that the location of the archive with the exported database is kept in the /opt/cp suite R77 FW1 bin upgrade_tools, and it's called original.tgz. So those are our options that are available for the Gaia operating system. We can perform a backup via the GUI, and we know that that lives in the /var cp backups directory. We know that that's where our backups live. So if we do a cd over to /var, just a quick review here, we're going to take a look at cp backup. And then under here, if we do a list, we see the actual CP backup directory. And then inside there is where our backups will be. So we know we have the backup option from the GUI. We also have that same type of backup option via the command line. But we also have the option of running a migrate export or an upgrade_export to back up our Gaia operating system. So I hope you guys got some good information there that's going to help you be able to back up environments, prepare yourself for migrating them to a new platform, or just to perform some good solid maintenance to make sure if something goes bad, you have a backup of your Gaia operating system. Congratulations, we have completed our module on the backup of the Gaia operating system. In this module, let's run through a quick recap of what we saw. In the module, we saw our first option was going to be a GUI backup via the Gaia web UI. So inside of here, we have the option for performing a backup. We also saw some options available there for snapshot. And I mentioned that I don't use a snapshot a lot, but the snapshot options are there. And it's important for you to understand what they are. And they're just basically a bit-by-bit copy of what lives in the web UI. But we also saw the option for using the GUI backup, performing a local backup, or sending it over to an SCP server. All those options are available. And then from that same option there under maintenance for backups, we can also perform a scheduled backup. So I mentioned that we want to schedule that every Friday evening, maybe at 12 midnight, just to make sure the week's changes are backed up. Then from there, we reviewed the CLI and we saw exactly where the backup file lives. The backup file will reside under the /var/cp backups directory. And then from there, we looked at these CLI options for the migrate export or migrate import command. And again, those are carried in the $fwdir/bin/upgrade_tools. And then we'll kick that command off with the ./migrate or ./migrate/import or /export, depending on the type of option you want to do for importing or exporting your data. So I hope you learned a ton of wonderful information there that will help you back up and understand what's going on in your GUI window as opposed to the CLI with your Gaia operating system. Well, it's going to eventually happen to you. As a network administrator or someone responsible for managing your company's firewall or your client's firewalls, you're going to run into a situation where you need to perform a disaster recovery. And this module is all about disaster recovery. So in this module, what we're actually going to do is we're going to recover our Chicago firewall site on top of an R77.10 VM. So we made the precautions, we made the actual steps, and we actually performed an upgrade export. We made our backup files, and we stored those in an offsite location, so we're in good shape. So a lot of times the disasters that happen to you as a network administrator really have nothing to do with your planning. They could be anywhere from a natural disaster to a company merger, an acquisition, or even a bankruptcy or a company splitting in half. At some point, due to one of those issues, most of the time you're going to have to recover your management server or rebuild in another colo or another data center, or you're going to need to do this for customers if you're a Checkpoint consultant. So in this particular module, what we're going to do is we're going to recover that Chicago firewall site, and we're going to rebuild it on a VM that I've called Chicago Firewall Recovery. So for this one right here, I pretty much set the VMware settings up. Pretty standard at this point. I gave it 4 gigs of memory, 4 processors. I went ahead and gave it a little bit more hard drive space of 100 gigs. We're using the R77.10 ISO package for Gaia. We bridged our first interface out to our 10.1 network. Our VMnet 2 will represent the 192.168.50 network, but we'll see that as we start the configuration and the actual displays and auto detect. So at this point, I just went through a straight Gaia install, gave it its outside IP address of 10.1.1.254, like we've done before in previous modules. And it's just basically a bare install of the Gaia OS. So now we're going to log into the web page and reconfigure everything, and then import our backup files and show you the steps that you need to know if you need to perform a recovery of a standalone setup like our Chicago firewall site. Now these steps that we present will be the exact same steps that you need to do if you're performing the recovery of a standalone management server, for example. So let's go ahead and pause for a moment. We're going to jump over to our Windows host, and then we're going to log in and walk through the steps of disaster recovery. So now that we've pretty much booted up to our actual Gaia portal here for our R77.10 Chicago firewall site, so we're going to go ahead and log in under our default username and password. I use the same username and password as we did when we originally built it on Secure Platform. And we're going to do the same thing for the recovery module as well. So in this module, what we'll see here is this is a new setup. So we're going to have a first time configuration wizard. We need to select next. And we're going to tell it to continue with Gaia R77.10. Now this is a little different than what you've seen before. Now you have the option of installing the version from a Checkpoint Cloud or install from a USB device. Now we're just going to tell it to continue with Gaia R77.10. The first management connection will be our outside connection on 10.1.1.254. We'll select next. And for the user center, if we want to configure an interface to connect to the Checkpoint user center, it's optional. Go ahead and leave it on ETH1 for now. And we're going to tell it to configure the IPv4 is off. We'll select next. Now for our host name, let's go ahead and give it our Chicago-Firewall. Okay, for our domain name, we're going to use trainpros.net like we had before for our actual domain name. Okay, and for our DNS servers, we're going to use Google's DNS server. We're going to use the 8.8.8.8, and we'll select next here. And we'll just use the regular time. We don't need a network time protocol. We'll select next again, and we're going to tell it's going to be a security gateway or security management server. So we'll leave our indication there. We'll select next, and we're actually going to have a security gateway and a security management. It's not part of an actual cluster, so we don't need to select this. And we'll tell it to automatically download Blade and contract information. Highly recommended. We'll select next to this. Now our administrator name, I recommend we keep it to the same thing as our install account. In this case, it's going to be admin. And we're going to put our default password in here. And then we'll select next. And for our GUI clients, it's going to be any IPs. Again, if you want to lock this down to a specific network range or specific host, you can feel free to do that in your lab or in your production environment. We'll select next here, and then we can tell it to improve experience by sending some data over to Checkpoint. I'm okay with that, so we'll select finish, and we'll select yes, and this will actually start the configuration process. So as you can see, it's pretty much the same thing as installing a new Gaia management server and firewall standalone setup. The only difference between this is we won't be configuring everything from scratch. We won't have to do all the security rules. We won't have to do all the user accounts, everything for VPNs, everything that was built before basically was packaged up and put into a tar gunzip file when we made our upgrade export off of our R77.10 deployment before. So as we can see, let's go ahead and let it finish up the actual installation here. We'll complete this, finalize the config, and at that point we'll need to reboot our actual VM or a physical machine if you're using a physical or an appliance. And after it's rebooted, you'll come back, we'll go back into the web page on the outside IP of 10.1.1.254, and we'll configure a few processes there. Then we'll jump into Smart Console and we'll look at some command line options as well for recovering this particular Chicago firewall site. So let's pause for a moment, let this finish up the installation. We'll reboot this platform and we'll come back and pick it up as we start the recovery process. So now that we've rebooted our actual Gaia machine, now we can log in with our same admin account. So everything's fully configured as a standalone setup at this point, with the exception that it doesn't have all of our database or our security rules or any of that information. So the last thing that we're going to do from the portal side, we're going to go ahead and configure our inside interface for the 192.168.50.1 network. So we'll need to make sure that we configure this for our inside interface of our Chicago firewall. So what we'll do is we'll select ETH1 and we'll select edit. We're going to make sure you enable this interface, and we're going to give it our IP of 192.168.50.1. And again, this is a 24-bit subnet mask. So 255.255.255.0. We'll select OK. So once we do this, this will basically allow this interface to come up for us. So at this point, we have our outside interface up, we have our inside interface up, so we're in great shape there. Now the next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and just minimize this particular option here, and then we're going to come down and open up our actual PuTTY window. So under our actual PuTTY window, we're going to go over to our Chicago Firewall Site A connection. So we're going to actually connect to that VM on its outside, and it's telling us that basically we changed the VM config again. So we'll say yes to that, and we're going to log in as our admin account. So now that we're logged in, we're getting our database warning. So we'll tell it the lock database override. Okay, we'll select expert, and we'll have to set this up. So we'll do set expert, and we'll use our actual command completion. Okay, and we'll set our expert password, basically the same thing as the install password and the admin account. So you basically want to keep that consistent across the board. That way you know exactly what the password should be. Alright, so now that we're logged into expert mode. So at this point, again, if we do an FW ver, we're going to see it's R77.10. FWM ver is going to tell us that it's the security management server. FW stat will basically tell us that it's on initial policy. So we don't have the standard policy installed yet because we haven't actually pushed a security policy out because this is a brand new setup. So it's just a point of interest information I wanted to see, and I wanted for you to see as well, because basically before you install anything, it's running the initial policy, and it only allows very few ports through, which we've talked about before, but it's basically going to allow your HTTPS and your SSH port of 22 to come into your firewall. So at this point, we're in pretty good shape. Now what we want to do, we want to go ahead and connect over to our actual setup on our machine, and we're going to do a change directory, and we're actually going to change directory to $fwdir/bin, and under the bin directory you're going to do a CD to your upgrade tools directory. Okay, so let's type in clear to give us a little bit more real estate, and now if we do a list and we do a pwd, we can see that we're in our upgrade tools directory and we had our symbolic link via $FW dir that brought us over to this particular area of the install. So at this point, we see our default upgrade tools directory. So what we're going to do is we're going to FTP over on my network here of 10.1.1.101. And it says welcome to Meta Networks, so that's what I call my local subnet here. So we're going to log in. And then we're going to log in. After we log in, we're going to log in with our password for the FTP server. All right, so we're logged in. We're going to type in bin. We're going to type in hash. And then we're going to do an mget for orig.tgz. All right, we're going to say yes to this. And this is actually going to reach out to an FTP server, grab that original tar gun zip upgrade export file that we created for our Chicago Firewall Site A once we got to R77.10, and that was transferred successfully over to our recovery firewall management server. So we'll type in an actual buy to exit the FTP server. We'll do a actual clear command again to give us some real estate. And if we do ls, we should see our original.tgz is now on the system. And that's what we have here. So point of something I like to do before I actually try to recover the new machine, I like to have a good backup if that recovery process has an issue. So what I end up doing is I'll create a backup of my new install that I just performed. So in this case, we're going to do a // and we'll do an upgrade _ export, and we're just going to store this locally. We're going to call it new.tgz. We'll hit enter. We'll say yes to this, and we'll let it go ahead and copy the required files and create that upgrade export file, which is locally stored on the hard drive in this same directory. But if you have a problem with your import, it's nice to have a portion to jump back to so you don't have to reinstall Gaia again, and it'll really save you some time. So it's a good tip that you should be doing as well. So as we can see, it's compressing the files. It'll just take roughly about a minute, maybe 2 minutes, whenever you do a fresh install for it to create this for us. And once it creates it, it'll actually give us the information and tell us exactly where on the hard drive it's stored at. So the location of the archive with the exported database is this particular directory, new.tgz is the file name. All right, so now what we're going to do is do a /upgrade _ import this time, and we're going to use our original.tgz. We're going to hit enter, and then that's going to actually extract the database information. So what this will do, we'll extract our database information. It will import our actual database information. We'll say yes that we want to continue, and once this actually imports everything into our database and it terminates all the processes that are currently running, it's going to import our actual database and then restart all the checkpoint processes. And once that's actually done, it'll basically build us a mirror copy of what we had on our Chicago Firewall Site A. So as you can see, this is a pretty good process, and it works quite well. The upgrade export process from CheckPoint is flawless. I've never had any significant issues with it other than some of the things we've talked about before, making sure you know the right host name, making sure you know what IP address, and making sure the exact copy of the operating system version that you had before. If you have all those things, 99% of the time you can recover with no issues whatsoever. So as we can see, it's now saying importing the files. So as we can see, it actually went through and stopped all the checkpoint processes, and now it's importing the database files that make up our security policy, our network address translation policy, our users and administrators, any of our IPS deployment settings for intrusion prevention stations, or anything that you've done for a VPN configuration for your remote access clients, as well as your site-to-site configurations for your IPsec. So those phase 1 and phase 2 connections maybe you have to partner companies out there that are terminated on your CheckPoint firewall, all of that information is backed up and it's actually recovered directly into your upgrade export file. So as we can see, it says the import operation completed successfully. Do we want to start our checkpoint services? We're going to say yes to this and hit enter, and this will actually start up all the checkpoint processes. So at this point, providing that if your firewall's all connected, you have the cables in it, it's connected to the outside switch, it's connected to your inside switch where your users are coming from. As soon as it actually starts up this services, it'll start working and you'll start passing traffic. The NAT processes will kick in, the security firewall, the IPS processes, everything will be up and running. So what I do recommend us doing at this point is once all the processes start up for us, it's a good idea to go ahead and log into your smart dashboard application, making sure that it looks exactly the way you want it to look, and go ahead and install policy, because that's something that we have to do. And once our policy is installed, we're back to exactly where you were before. So your disaster recovery process, we've taken the correct precautions, and we should be in good shape here once all of our checkpoint processes start up here. And as we can see, it can take a couple minutes, and as it restarts those processes, don't be alarmed if your PuTTY window kind of freezes on you, because what will happen as it starts up those processes, it may kill your SSH session temporarily in order for it to recover that. So don't be alarmed if it gets to the point of something like this. So what we'll do is actually come down to our web page, and what we'll do is actually click on this, and we'll backspace all the way back over to our IP address. And we're going to hit enter here. And once we hit enter, we can see that it actually went through the process of giving us a login page again. So we're in good shape there. So what we're going to do at this point, we're going to click on start. We're going to choose our smart dashboard application for R77.10. We'll let this start up, and we'll log in as our administrator account. And we'll choose login. And this will basically log us in. And what we should see is that exact same database, the exact same running config, everything that you had before, completely backed up, completely recovered. And this can, like I said before, this can be in a new data center. It can be on a new piece of hardware, or it could be in a new virtual machine. Doesn't matter, all the processes are exactly the same, and because we followed all the processes, we were able to recover our Chicago firewall site. So we're in great shape here. So like I said, the next thing we want to do is go ahead and install policy here. So we'll select install policy to our Chicago firewall. We'll select OK here, and what we'll see here on our policy installation status here at the bottom, it's currently at 14%, but it's going to start verifying the process. And after the verification process, it's going to push on through, and we should get a successful install of our security policy. And it's at 100%, and it says installation completed successfully. So you're in great shape. At that point, we have fully recovered our Chicago firewall site. If we go over to Smart View Tracker, we will start to see actual traffic starting to be natted, or the security rules and everything that was there before will be there again. So in this case, you're in great shape, and you have fully recovered your Chicago firewall site. So it's a good feeling. We have the steps, we have everything we need to know, and we know exactly what's going on, and we can see that traffic is passing. So at this point, if we go to our actual command line options here, we'll select our command line, and we're actually going to ping the 10.1.1.254, which is the outside IP of our firewall. We'll issue our ping commands, and we can see that those are returning to us based on our security rules. We'll hit our drop down, and we should see an ICMP, and this is the machine we're coming from. It's the 10.1.1.32. So as we can see, we've came from the outside. We ping the outside IP on ETH0 for ICMP. It's running the standard actual security policy, and it's being honored by our management rule. So as we can see, we're in wonderful shape. We fully rebuilt our Chicago firewall site. We recovered everything, and now you know exactly all the steps that you need to take to back up and to recover your firewall site. And it doesn't really matter if it's standalone like what we have or a distributed environment. The processes are exactly the same. So you've made it through the firestorm of a disaster on your checkpoint environment. And having these skills that we covered in this module will make sure that when you encounter those, you won't have any problems in getting the environment exactly the way it was before. So in this module, we covered the actual DR steps. So you saw that we reviewed our VMware settings. We looked at the Gaia install wizard just to get the base OS laid down. We went ahead and performed a reboot of our virtual machine. And then we configured our inside interface for 192.168.50.1 to be the inside interface of our Chicago firewall site. We went ahead and accessed our upgrade tools via the CLI. We did an upgrade package. We moved that over via the FTP process. And then we finally imported that back up via the upgrade import. And then you saw that the verification took place via Smart Console. We installed policy and made sure traffic was moving exactly like it should be. And we recovered the site just like it was before the disaster. So I hope you learned some wonderful information in here, and I'll see you in the next module.